The Culture Plus series is part of the Norton Center's Creative Conversations program, which is supported by an endowed gift by 1995 Center College graduate, Dr. Jeff Johnson and Ken Michael. Now I'd like to introduce to you Molly Baker, the Norton Center Engagement Services Manager, to provide some preliminary details you'll need for this evening's program. Take it away, Molly.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. We are so excited that so many folks have decided to join us tonight. So welcome. Just going to go over a couple really quick logistical things. So first, you'll notice that everyone is muted, but that does not mean that you won't get to contribute questions during the Q&A period that'll happen later in the program. So the way you'll want to submit a question for a panelist or for the group of panelists is to direct that in the chat to Matt Overing. He'll field those questions to our moderator tonight. So that's how you can get to your questions, and we'll do our very best to get to all of them. We also, you're welcome to view this program either in the gallery view. We have all of our speakers pinned to the first page, or if you want to do speaker view, then the person who's speaking will be featured prominently on your screen. So you can do either one, whatever works best for you. And as Steve mentioned, we will be having an encore, and we want to thank Grant, who's on the panel tonight, for organizing a mini Super Smash Brothers tournament that'll be streamed live on Twitch with a Switch. So I'll have instructions on a slide for how you can join us after the program. But until then, thank you so much, and have a good evening with us.
Thanks, Molly. And I also want to thank the entire Norton Center staff for making this program happen and for all the hard work each of you are providing to get us prepared to have in-person programs again. Speaking of which, we're getting very close to sharing with the community our plans for the upcoming performing arts season, so stay tuned. Now, it's with great pleasure that I introduce Center College's new president, Dr. Milton Moreland, to share a few words. Originally from Idaho, Dr. Moreland earned a degree in history from the University of Memphis. From the Claremont Graduate University of California, he earned master's and PhD degrees supporting his studies in archaeology, ancient history, and religion. Dr. Moreland has been at Rhodes College since 2003 in various roles, most recently as its chief academic officer. Dr. Moreland and his family moved to Danville in late June, and he has been very busy leading the Center College team through this current pandemic. Welcome, President Moreland. And by the way, I just wanted to ask, do you engage in esports or gaming?
Well, thank you, Steve. It is awesome to join you. Yes, I'm a professional esports player on the side. Just kidding. But I have been playing since I was a child, frankly, if you count Pong. And then 25 years ago, when my first son was born, we started playing Smash Bros. And then all sorts of other games, a lot of football and basketball, frankly. But I pull up last Thanksgiving, on the couch, and they're all playing Super Smash Bros. Again. I'm like, what's up? So what goes around comes around. I love it. I'd never won any of those games, by the way. Well, I am excited to have the Norton Center up and running, even if not live, and even if not putting on some of the greatest shows that have ever come to the state of Kentucky or the Southeast United States. And that's what the Norton Center is famous for. So I look forward to getting back to the day when we can all go into the Norton Center together and see some amazing performances and art together. This program is part of what they do, though. And I think ongoing will be really fun to see some virtual performances and programs, as well as to get back to live. So I really appreciate Steve and the entire Norton Center staff, many of whom are actually taking on new roles at the college this semester during the pandemic, which is amazing for us. In fact, Nina from the Norton Center is my assistant right now in the president's office. So extremely grateful to everybody on this call from the Norton Center for your work. Well, I am so pleased to be able to introduce Dr. John Harney, who serves many roles at the college, but is a terrific colleague in the history department. He's been at Center since 2013. He is now an associate professor. That means he's been tenured as of 2019. He is dedicated to many fields of study, one might say, but interestingly has taken up writing and speaking and teaching courses on areas that include the history of popular participation in sports in the modern era, representation of history in video games, and the wider uses of interpretation of history in popular culture. Professor Harney received his BA in history and English literature from the University College Cork in Cork, Ireland, an MA in Chinese Studies from the University of Sheffield in the UK, and a PhD in Modern East Asian History from the University of Texas at Austin. He is currently the coach for the Center College Esports team, which is wonderful to have. I believe in esports, and as the president, I want to see it grow. So I was thrilled to see this program, and in the coming years, watch out, world, esports at Center is coming your way. So we're early on, but we're going to grow that program into a very competitive program in the college world. So looking forward to all of that. I just made some big promises, John, but I think we should do it. I think we got a shot to be a really great esports program. So appreciate you and all the work you're doing, and look forward to seeing everybody on this great panel, and then the students talking and playing at the end. Greetings to everybody.
Thank you so much, President Moreland, and I want to just remind you this is being recorded, so those promises will live on forever in posterity. Thanks, President Moreland. Thank you also. I'm going to keep thanking people because a lot of work went into tonight. Steve Hoffman, O'Malley Baker, and Matt Overing, who worked very hard to make this event happen. I was going to introduce myself. President Moreland flattered me greatly by doing so thank you so much. I'm joined by four really, really good panelists. I'm really excited to share their experiences, to hear them share their experiences and their viewpoints with us. I'm going to introduce them as we go through, and I'm going to give each of them a chance to kind of share their insights for a few minutes and without me interrupting them, which, as people who've taken my classes know, is a weakness that I certainly have. Once people have had a chance to share some insights with us, I'm going to go ahead and lead a kind of a moderated panel discussion, after which we'll transition into a Q&A where we'll take questions from people watching. So allow me first to take a moment to briefly talk about kind of video games and where video games are right now. And, you know, I'm an historian, so doing this briefly pains me greatly, but I'm going to give it the best shot I can. The industry, video games industry has changed enormously over the past 40 and 50 years. At one point, you know, President Moreland mentioned playing Pong. One of my first memories is playing Pong on an Atari 2600, one of the first machines to mark part of several attempted revolutions to turn what was an arcade experience up to that point, something you did out in public and paid money to a business owner to use machines that they had rented, to having the machine in your home. This was kind of a big change that kind of defined the 1980s in many ways. And of course, the great success in that was the Nintendo Entertainment System from Nintendo. And in the decades that have gone on since, Nintendo was still in the game. They're joined by giant corporate bodies such as Sony and Microsoft. PC gaming has continued to maintain a very large audience. And then, of course, with the rise of smartphones, we've seen an explosion in mobile gaming, which kind of, you know, only a few years ago was seen as kind of a very niche thing and is now very much and a very important part of the gaming landscape. Games today are much more visible than they once were, and they're being played by and they're being created by a very diverse group of people. Video games aren't just for kids, nor are they just for men or for boys. They're everywhere, and they're being played by anyone who wants to play them. As a result, the commercial success of the video game industry has exploded. To give you a sense of some of the numbers involved, Sony produced a game called Ghost of Tsushima, which came out for their console, the PlayStation 5, only a few weeks ago. And in the first 3 days of sale, they sold 2.4 million copies of that game. Also, you have Animal Crossing, the latest iteration of which sells on the Nintendo Switch. They sold 22.4 million copies in the first 4 months of the game being available to the public. And for those who don't know, these games, at least when they're brand new, cost $60 per copy. So, the industry, at least the top line numbers, it's pretty healthy. Financial analysts, now regularly report that the video game industry dwarfs both the music and film industries combined. Some analysts are pegging the dollar value of the video game industry as up to $150 billion US per year. So, a massive industry like this is going to have a large footprint in economic spaces, cultural spaces, the arts, and of course, increasingly, sports. And of course, particularly those latter two, the arts and esports, that's why we're here tonight, and we're hoping to share some insight with you on how all this stuff works. Now, although there are still very, very successful games produced by very, very small teams, and in some isolated cases by one person, the kind of games you're seeing advertised during, for example, the NBA playoffs and the like, are games that are produced by, massive or large groups of people, a diverse pool of talented people who do lots and lots of different skill sets. And that's where our first panelist is going to come in and share some insights with us. Allie Habeeb is a producer of mobile games with a decade of experience in the entertainment industry. She has worked for DreamWorks and NBC Universal, and she has received an Emmy nomination for her work on Voltron VR Chronicles, a virtual reality experience. Allie currently works with mobile game developer Jam City. And so, Allie, I'm going to start with you first, if that's okay. Modern video games require a lot of work from a lot of people, as I said a minute ago. What different kinds of work are there in your experience, and what role is there, if any, for the arts and for modes of creative expression in what you do and what your coworkers do?
I'm going to address the second part of your question first. Frankly, video games just wouldn't exist without creative, artistic minds. To divorce the notion of art from video games is almost like divorcing it from film. There's still a narrative, an artistic vision, a design, and we have artists at every step of that process. I can't even really list out all of the different art disciplines because there are like people that specialize in combat animation, for example. And in a lot of ways, game designers and game artists have to be more creative than their counterparts in film and television, because to make something functional or function as expected in a game, you often have to find unique solutions for it. Like off the top of my head, the game Horizon Zero Dawn is this open world action role play game. And it has these really beautiful environments, but to get the level of like realism and artistic lighting and physics and all of that, they had to come up with some clever solutions. Like all of the rocks and pillars were procedurally generated. The entire environment would render in pieces as your view moved around the space, and then the rest would disappear. A lot of this is not uncommon for games now, but it did take a lot of creativity to come up with solutions like that that would allow that type of hyper realism without breaking your game, right? And games don't even let you write like linear narrative most of the time. You have to consider like what a player may have encountered based on what path they took, who they talked to, and you just have to be extremely thoughtful about how to unfold a meaningful story when the medium is interactive and adaptable and changeable. You also have this added challenge because gaming is not passive. You, as a player, become an active participant in this story, in this world. It's truly one of the most personal forms of art, in my opinion, whether you're designing the experience or playing it. As for the specific roles in gaming, it does vary depending on the size and scale of the game we're talking. A good starting point would be you have like a game designer who, if I'm putting it in movie terms, is like a director of the game. You have the artists, you have programmers, you have a producer, testers, writers, sound designers, analytics. And then all of these disciplines have their own subcategories. With artists, we have like animators, modelers, riggers, user interface designers. I mean, it's a really, really big industry. Yeah, I think that answers the question, but if I missed something, let me know.
No, that was great. Thanks, Allie. And we're definitely going to come back and need more questions for you in the moderated discussion. So yeah, so, pretty complicated. That's my gift of the gab that I got from my native Ireland there to sum it up. No, exactly. It's great. And we were going to go on from you, Allie, to Grant Lyon, who is a senior here at Center College. Grant's an anthropology and sociology major and a music minor. He is president of the student-run Esports Club at Center and a founding member of our Esports program. He's actually captain of our Overwatch team. Now, Grant, I put you after Allie because whereas Allie works in these kind of large scope, commercial projects, a few months ago, you and some of your fellow center students decided that not having a graduation for your friends wasn't going to be fun. So you got together as a team and you built the Norton Center in the game Minecraft in order to hold a virtual graduation ceremony. And I was honored to attend that ceremony. It was really a wonderful, wonderful day. What did it mean to be able to experience that ceremony inside the game? And if you could share with us kind of, why you chose to do that and what it meant to you.
Yeah, so I'm going to put on a little video of it that I made. That's got a little bit of the ceremony and a little bit of just what the build looks like. Now I'm just going to talk over it and not talk about the video at all. So there's two reasons that we undertook a project like this. The first one is that it's something fun, creative, and productive to do with your friends during a time when connecting with people is exceptionally difficult. The second one is for the class of 2020. There's so much in the world that's disrupted by this pandemic right now. And there's so many meaningful things that people want to do the normal way, going to weddings, going to funerals, going to graduations that we just can't do the normal way. So we wanted to do something that could still be meaningful, even if it wasn't the normal way, if you will. So we sort of embraced the strangeness of the times, and we did that via a quirky, blocky video game that kids like to play. And that's what we did. So it started off with a student named Cruz, who graduated last year. Really good friend of mine, and he was inspired by similar projects at other schools. Specifically, UC Berkeley created their entire campus in Minecraft for their graduation thing. They, of course, started in the spring. They started in spring break. We, on the other hand, had a week before graduation. So he messaged me, and he told me he wanted to try to do this, and then I went on a Zoom call with him the next day, and I tried to talk him out of it, because this is a famously non-rectangular, really complicated building, and he wanted to make it entirely out of cubes. But I did not win in that discussion, and so me and a group of several very wonderful, very talented students worked all week, and we made it. And of course, it's just an example of something that games can facilitate. I think games are so interesting as a medium by which to do things. At the end of the day, for me, a lot of what makes games great is that you can do them with others. Certainly there's plenty of games you can play alone, and I certainly do that as well, but it's something more than like just watching TV with another person. You're there, you're physically, virtually there with someone else, whether you're fighting or you're working together, it doesn't really matter, but you're interacting in a space with them, and that's really cool. I think there exists like this stigma in games that, virtual reality, that's not real life like other activities. I think people say that to their kids a lot, but people know better. We know it's not real. But it's kind of like this, like we're all interacting right now in a virtual space that's only possible via electronic different media and stuff. And I think games are so cool because we can interact with each other in ways that are just so wildly interesting and unique that weren't possible a few decades ago. So facilitating these types of spaces where we can play with others is a really important part of what I tried to do well at Center, through the club or through our Minecraft server or through our new teams or just casually with friends. I just think it's really cool. I love playing games, and I love that that's a thing people can do. A lot of people like sports and like music and like all sorts of different stuff. I love all sorts of different stuff too, but I think this is a thing that can really bring people together. And it's not just about some nerdy teenager playing alone in his basement. I do plenty of that too, but like it's also a really social thing. That's kind of my 2 cents on that. But yeah, this is our Minecraft Norton Center. I am talking over the video now. It's all blocky and fun. Got our Wizziger stage.
That's great. That's great, Grant. And that's kind of, I think, a big thing in my lifetime. Make myself sound particularly old, but like the knock on it for a long time is that it's inherently an antisocial experience. You know, I think you're kind of demonstrating that's not necessarily the case, right? Oh, so it's great. Well, thank you so much. Well, that was actually, Grant, you did a great job of giving me a lead-in to our next panelist, Damian Laymon, by talking this idea of community and interacting, because Damian is going to come and talk to us about his experiences being an esports coach here at Boyle County High School here in Danville, here in Boyle County. If I can introduce Damian for a moment. Damian Laymon teaches computer programming, web development, and graphic design in yearbook at Boyle County High School, where he is also an assistant coach for Boyle County football and Boyle County track and field, and he's the head coach of the Boyle County High School esports team. So clearly Damian's just a man with a terrible amount of time on his hands, not much to do. This doesn't sound like he's being kept busy at all. Damian, I need to make sure that you all know this, led Boyle County esports to the first ever Kentucky esports state championship in the winter of 2019. So we're honored anyway to have such a great panelist, but also Damian, to have a state champion is a special thing. So I have a question for you too, Damian, to kind of set you up. From your experience, you know, leading these young people, how does participating in an esports team, you know, a virtual environment, like Grant was just saying, how does it help make players feel part of a community? And how does that differ, or does it differ from more well-established team environments, for example, like on the football or the track and field teams?
When was it? It was the fall of 2018 that we got an email saying that KHSAA was going to be launching an esports team, and I didn't even mention it to my students. I didn't have time to. Within, I think, one period, I had 20 teenagers, you know, in the room saying, "Hey, we got to get this going." And I was the one they came to, not because of my prowess as a player, but because I have the computer lab, so I was the obvious choice. So they came and you know, at first I kind of rolled my eyes a little bit, because I come from, you know, I played games all growing up. You know, I remember my first Atari, and I remember Donkey Kong and Pitfall and Pac-Man and that kind of thing. And I knew it had evolved and grown, but, you know, I didn't realize how much at the time. When the school and the board decided to go ahead and run with it, they first asked me if I would head it up, which I was more than glad to do. But the school always asks, and I'm very proud of this about Boyle County High School, and I'm sure they're not the only ones that do it, but I'm really proud that Boyle County schools, whenever they look at adding a new event or a club or a sport or anything like that, the first question that they always ask, and I've seen them do it a couple of times, is, will this serve a student group that may be underserved in some way? And I think the obvious answer to that was yes, because Boyle County has a great reputation in sports, football, track and field, wrestling, bowling, state championships in all those different places. But they saw that there was kind of this hole, and there was definitely a demand for these young people to come and play, and so we decided to actually launch that. I quickly realized that there already really was a community. It wasn't that, we created a community. It was already there, because I didn't even realize that all these young men and women were accomplished gamers until they came in and they started playing. And if you ever played, the game that we started with was League of Legends. That was the season 0 game that we won the state championship in. And if you've never played it before, give it a shot. It is incredibly complicated. You have, I don't know, I saw some my esports team actually when I was scanning through the list of people who've come in. So some of you guys are in there, and they might tell. There are probably 100+ champions, each with their own strengths and weaknesses and advantages and disadvantages, and they play well against this particular champion, but they're vulnerable to this champion. And so there's so much strategy that goes to it. It's not as simple as dodging, barrels to save a princess from a monkey. It's really evolved to become so much more. And these kids, they were masters of that. So, I tell everybody, I've actually been a part of 7 state championships between football and 5 with track, and then 1 with esports. And I remind everybody that on all of them, even on esports, I was a very small part of it, because if I can be perfectly honest, at the state championship, I wasn't fully sure what was going on. I was just watching the kids play. And I knew we were doing good when our team or our fans were cheering. So that was great. But When we went to that state championship, there were 100+ people in the room from different schools. There were other schools that didn't make it to the state championship that came just because they realized how big of a deal it was that this was starting, and they wanted to be a part of it. They wanted to be there to support it. So I definitely think it's a great thing that we have started, and and continues to grow. When we came back, you talk about how community and how it fits in with other sports and more, I guess, what you'd consider conventional sports. Something that really made my heart swell was the next day when we came back in. Our school had recently won football state championship and track and field state championships, and a lot of those athletes came in my room, and they found the players, and they gave them a high five, they gave them a handshake, they said, "Welcome to the club." And that meant a great deal, because it really gave these young people a voice. It gave them something that is their own, and it made that community, I guess, maybe for lack of a better word, a little bit more legitimate, because it's not only part of their community, but it's also now part of the school community. And it's something that they can be a part of when they're at school. It gives them a reason in the school settings to want to come to school, to want to be part of something, and to plug in that way. And so that really, I remember one of the biggest, burliest football players walk in and just gave a high five to one of my nerdiest kid you're ever going to see. He's your stereotypical esports player. But it was great to actually see that. And that was something that you don't see that often. And maybe the last thing I'll say is, when we had our banquet at the end of the year, I remember one of them saying, we got esports jerseys, and one of the kids, he was a high school senior getting ready to graduate, said, "This is the first time in my life that I've ever worn a school jersey." And to be able to be a part of that, and to have those young people be a part of something, and to be able to buy in, I think especially in the climate and the day that we live in now, that was something that was incredibly rewarding to me. So.
Great, thanks, Damian. That's great. I'm already having similar experiences here at Center. It's what we do, right? This mission of kind of trying to help young people, really. I also want to thank you, Damian, in front of, I know a lot of Center students here tonight, including the captain of Overwatch team. When Center College decided to begin investigating whether or not to even have an esports program, our dean, Ellen Goldie, invited you to come and give a talk to some people. I was in the room for that, and that was a big part. That really helped us not just kind of make the decision to go ahead with it, but also to think about things you've just been talking about, community, and really thinking of, that's when we realized, okay, this is something that would fit what Center wants to do, and that was a really important moment. Thanks so much. Well, our last panelist for the evening, before we go on to the more open conversation, is Anya Hartman. And Anya has come to us. She's a first-year student here at Center, so she hasn't been here terribly long. Hopefully she knows that we don't always have fall semesters quite like the one we're currently having. And Anya's on the League of Legends team here at Center College. She plays support. She's going to play support for us. And she has experience with the high school team at Lafayette in Lexington. A graduate of Lafayette High School in Lexington. She's part of the program here. She's also she's a member of Center Cheer, and she's the recipient of multiple scholarships to study behavioral neuroscience and art. So Anya, we're delighted you're here. I'm going to set you up here with a little question so you can share some insights with us. There's a lot of stereotypes around video game culture, particularly about who plays them. And there's this long-standing idea that games are a male-dominated space. And I think, like a lot of stereotypes, is probably not true, but maybe a little bit more true than we'd like it to be at the same time. I don't know. What's been your experience as someone who has played games and particularly also competed in esports and in these visible spaces?
I will be fully honest. What you see in a lot of game-based communities that are explicitly titled as gamer type things will be predominantly male, but anything that encourages either like a specific game, like everybody here plays League of Legends or everybody here plays Overwatch, you'll see a lot more women show up for it. And from what I've noticed, a lot of women just have less confidence calling themselves gamers than men do, just because it feels like you have to have a lot more like rules, you have to play a lot more specific things in order to officially have the title. But honestly, from what I've seen, gamer culture itself is pretty encouraging to everybody. The thing that matters the most is just whether or not you're good. I think the thing that really affects women in gaming is just outside culture and perspective on gaming, because like Grant said in the beginning, a lot of gaming is seen as something of like, an old smelly dude in the basement playing by himself and not doing anything significant. So I think as soon as that clears up, you'll see a lot more confidence in everybody talking about what they like to play, having a lot more confidence in, discussing what they like to do, that type of stuff. But I do think you're right in the sense that it is kind of true that, women don't play a ton of games or whatever, aren't considered gamers and everything like that. But it's also greatly untrue in the sense that any woman that does play a video game is welcomed for the most part, and will get to do whatever they want to really do. But yeah.
Great, thanks, Anya. Well, that's great. I can tell everyone watching as well, we already have some fantastic questions coming in that I fully intend to ask our panelists. So certainly if you have a question, please share it with Matt Overing. I wanted to come off Anya's point. Allie, I'm going to go back to you here in just a second. As someone who works in the industry, and again, we're talking about, I think Anya's completely right, and it's a great point to make a distinction between kind of perceptions of gamer culture, and even that term can get loaded, right, versus the reality of how it works. As someone who works on games, because I've noticed in the last 20 years, you still have very what are perceived as stereotypically male games, or games would appeal to a certain kind of male demographic or whatever, in the same way there are films and music and everything else. But I mean, how much are people who make video games thinking about this kind of stuff now, like thinking about an audience, or especially if you're trying to reach a wider audience? Do you kind of break down how you're thinking about your player in those kind of ways? And by the way, I'm segueing everybody, watch out, to discussing kind of a connection between arts again and esports, specifically with games more broadly. So like when you're making the game, Allie, are these do you guys talk about these things? Is this something that producers will sit down and discuss, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, when you're making a game, there's always going to be the question of the demographic you're trying to serve, right? Like, you want to be able to sell this game. I think, unfortunately, what happens in the case of almost any entertainment medium is you have this, people only bought this game because it had this white, straight male protagonist who's like a swashbuckling adventurer, and that's what they want. That's all they want. Like, everyone looks like Nathan Drake from Uncharted, but it's changing, and I think it's changing in part because the makeup of the teams is becoming more diverse. Part of the problem you had early on in the video game industry is, and I'm really not trying to drag white straight males, but that's what it was filled with a bunch of young white straight males, and so the stories you would get were based on their experiences, and that's a natural effect of that. Now, as we're getting more women and more diversity in the industry as a whole, you're seeing a little bit more diversity in the story we tell. And I think, there still is a lot to be done there. But, it's changing. And I think ultimately, to be able to be in the shoes of like a more diverse character with a lot of different nuance is a really strong thing. I mean, you're playing as that character. You can experience things as that character. It's one of the most powerful mediums. Did I answer your question? You
did. Sorry,
Okay.
I was slow to unmute myself. That was a great answer. That, I agree more, even just my experience, someone playing games. I mean, I was going to move on then to ask, other people, maybe Grant, who might be a good person, because as someone who is a musician, in addition to being on an esports team, I think as Ali just did a great job of pointing out, it's something people are thinking about more in terms of narrative and how things look and everything else. Sometimes because it makes business sense, right? Because you want more people to really feel like they can connect to this thing. But then as a sports historian, I'll tell you, certainly in the field of history, there's a reluctance to think about sports as a meaningful thing. It's really, couldn't you be writing about Winston Churchill or something important instead? This is something that I had to kind of get over as a sports historian. So Grant, I'll go to you first if it's okay. Esports feels like a push towards competition and winning and losing. I mean, do you feel there's like a space there, a connection to these games and the arts and the kind of creativity that Ali has been talking about is involved in game production?
So I think the interesting thing about games is that they can be so many different things, so many of the different categories that we already, categorize things as. Games and the production of games certainly is an art. Games are often considered a work of art. And many games can provide players with the ability to make their own art, but they're not just an art. They're also, a form of entertainment, like books and movies and board games and stuff. And they're also this sort of type of sport or competition as well. And they can be things that are entirely different than those categories. Compared to other like forms of art and entertainment, the possibilities of what a game can be are kind of more limitless. Yeah, and compared to like for esports specifically, I think the magic of a game is that you're kind of part of it, that you're interacting in it. But we've sort of seen that people can still enjoy games even when they're not the ones playing them, and that's really interesting. And you see like the rise of streaming and the rise of esports, and it's kind of like watching your favorite sports team or watching your favorite musician perform. You can acknowledge that someone is doing something really well in a way that you like. You like to watch content creators who play something really well or play something in a way that is creative or humorous in some way. So it's super comparable to all sorts of different forms of entertainment.
Yeah, like this notion of performance. That's a great point, and this idea of audiences, you know, and today, so League of Legends, the big world championships happening in a couple of weeks, and today they released their official song, which is something that, you know, for example, soccer World Cups do that and nobody really cares, except for the year it was Pavarotti when it was awesome, but nobody else usually cares. But in League of Legends, it's this thing, and they did this really cool animation to go alongside it, and you can choose skins for your characters and all this kind of stuff. It's just, I kind of think it's interesting. Damian, if I could throw to you real quick, I mean, is that something, you know, you mentioned seeing kind of young lives transformed in many ways, kind of being in this, you know, playing League. I mean, you know, did you notice anything kind of in the expression, you know, in the way they could express themselves, or, you know, as a kind of an outlet for them in addition to being able to compete?
Well, I saw it as a way for them to have something that they're great at, you know, have something that they can. Well, it is incredibly creative. I don't know exactly how you say it. Just I always approach things from a problem solving and a design kind of a perspective. That's just kind of how my mind works. So I've always been fascinated when I watch my players. They'll come in, especially at you know, one of the big games. We knew who we were playing, and so they came in and they said, okay, here's our game plan. And just the amount of problem solving and the amount of strategy that went into it, you could tell there was a real passion to it. And it's something that every time they do it, you know, it changes because they have to reevaluate. They have to again solve the problem. They say this particular team does this really well. How are we going to counter that? So I don't know if I would say that it's necessarily the arts, but it is a form of expression, and it might be anecdotal, but I've always seen a lot of the kids who will come into my classrooms and really excel in the sciences and engineering. I also see that a large percentage of them are also artistic. They're also musicians, and you know, I've read that there is a connection between the two. You know, the brain kind of works in the same kind of way between those different types of outlets. So I could definitely see that, and I can't cite anything. I just know I've read things before, and in my own experience in seeing young people, I do see a connection there. So.
That's great. Yeah, like we say, I definitely see the same thing. I'm actually going to start going into questions from people watching because there's some of them are really good. So we're going to kind of segue into some of that. And speaking of kind of students of different backgrounds, we're going to start here actually the question for Grant and Anya. You can both chip in, or either of you can chip in. We have someone who's interested to know, what are your focused areas of study here at Center, and what are your aspirations after graduation? Any games related possibilities there for either of you?
If you don't mind me taking this question.
Please go ahead.
I'm currently focusing on probably behavioral neuroscience and visual arts, but I'm thinking about maybe going to computer science, and I definitely plan on looking into video game art and animation, just because the video game industry itself is probably one of the most stable places to get an art career right now, just because there's so much stuff with like concept art, 3D modeling, you know, rendering, just all kinds of stuff. So artists should really definitely look into video games if they're at all interested.
Cool, thanks. What about you, Grant? Have we won you over into becoming a video game soundtrack producer or something?
So I'm a sociology major here, which is not the expected answer for a person who does a lot of stuff related to video games. I think a lot of people expect to hear like computer science as like the video game major if you're speaking of things offered at Center. No, it's really just kind of a hobby. But I think, you know, everyone should have lots of different interests in things. Yeah, and I do music here as well. I'm also a music minor, but other than the fact that I composed Pomp and Circumstance on note blocks in the Minecraft ceremony, I don't usually relate the two too much, but I don't know.
No, that was a great moment. That was actually exactly what I was talking about. But I think it's interesting you bring that up, because what I tell people, especially the parents of high school students, if anybody's watching, is that Center College and what we call these liberal arts colleges, you know, that's what we're kind of offering people. I think is, you know, grant your experience. I'll do some music. Maybe I'll major in these two different things. Anya's major is planning to major in both art and behavioral neuroscience, and certainly at Center College, that kind of thing is really encouraged. And I think that sets people up really well. And this is where, Ali, watch out, because I'm coming to you here now in a second. We were just asking, you know, Anya and Grant, you know, what they're doing now and how they might parlay that into career. For you, you know, what kind of career opportunities maybe should young people who are going to be leaving high school soon and leaving college soon, what kind of career opportunities do you think they could be considering? And here's an interesting one that you can take a pass on if you need to. What kind of classes maybe should they be considering? Is that something that you would be thinking about a lot, or how would they be approaching that?
Yeah, I mean, the industry of video games as a whole has just so many opportunities for any kind of discipline to plug in. I would say that you know, if you do want to go into video games, you gotta play games. So you gotta know, you gotta know some game design that helps. I would also say if you can learn some coding, that's definitely helpful. Even if you are a producer, like I have studied some coding just to get a sense for like what happens on, you know, the other side of things that I'm not able to see. Even just like a base level knowledge of some stuff helps. You know, so if you're a programmer, there's all kinds of different programming you can do. There's like AI programming, game tool programming, server programming. Like, it's just the range of possible jobs here in video games is really, really large. I answered the first part of your question, but I don't know if I answered the second part.
I think the second part's actually really hard, right? Because this idea, you know, for example, we actually do have a class here that Professor Toth teaches, CSE 220, I think it is, Intro to Programming, which I took out of curiosity. And it was useful for me because he just goes over like what an algorithm is. And, you know, and I learned enough to be dangerous with Python, as I tell people. But even as somebody who likes to play video games, that was so helpful to me just to kind of get it. And I think that's kind of what you're saying, right? That
Yes.
you could, you know, I know enough to get it. And now I can do my job having some sense of what it will translate into.
Yes.
You know?
Also, sorry, and I forgot
No, go
the
ahead.
second part of your question, which was, you know, there are videos online. There's a lot of public libraries allow you to like digitally check out some programs like lynda.com and like other digital learning programs. Like, even if your university doesn't offer something specific to video games, you can learn Unity through these digital online courses, and you sometimes can get those free through like a public library card. You know, there's also things like if you have a university .edu address, you can now masterclass is only like $1 for a year. I'm not entirely sure. I know there's one by Will Wright who, you know, did all of The Sims, but there's stuff like that. If you can get an internship at a game company, that's huge. Like, you know, you learn a lot about what happens day to day in a job. You also get important network connections. Like, if you can be on good terms with the people that you're working with there. I mean, that's how I got my job. You know, if you do a good job, people want you around, right? So, yeah, internships, and then like little things like watching players and their strategies. If you have like a gamer that you really like, watch how they play. You know, there's usually like strategies you can pick up here and there that can teach you something about how the game is constructed and can be, you know, manipulated is a wrong word, but like can be toyed with itself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing, and maybe it's what I want to hear, but like, if you're a high school senior or a junior in college, and a junior or senior in college, and maybe you've just been doing chemistry this whole time or creative writing or something like that, like the door isn't really closed to you, right? That there's skill sets you could develop, but it's not something you have to have started the road on at like age 15 or something like that.
No, I don't even come from, I studied, communications in college, and I studied media theory, and like that doesn't really help when you're working in video games. But if you're passionate about the subject and you want to learn, like, you just got to find the right avenues to learn. A lot of people in video games didn't start in video games, although, I mean, as it becomes more and more prominent, there are full universities like dedicated to the craft of making video games and learning video games. But you don't have to be like specialized in it to
Right.
ultimately choose that industry. Yeah.
Great. That's great. Thanks, Ali. Let's go over some of the questions. And if people want a question in before we sign off for the night, now is the time to do it. Damian, I've got a great question here for you. Kind of building off what you're talking to us about earlier. What are the similar and different ways that you coach your esports team compared to the other sports teams that you're coaching at Boyle County?
Well, with esports, and it's not being self-deprecating, they were the experts. I just kind of got out of the way, especially in the first season. I spent more time learning than anything else in the first season. Even after that, they have such a depth of understanding of the mechanics of the game, especially with League of Legends. They know it better than I ever will. I spent like the entire summer of 2019 because I had the summer off. Let's call it studying and practicing. And so I spent a lot of time playing, and I got a little bit better, enough to at least know what I was talking about. But I still kind of defer to them. Whereas with football and track, with football, I've always been kind of the guy who helps out with the video, and I coached a little bit. But with track, that was something that I was a little bit more. I was the expert in. But when it comes to esports, most of the time, the students are the experts in that. So the main thing that I will do, I should say we, because we have an assistant coach. Her name's Angel Pullins, and she gets left out a lot, but she does a great job because she's a lot younger and she connects with them more, and she plays a lot more there. But really what we do for the most part is we let them focus on strategy. We let them focus on knowing their characters and knowing their champions. And for the most part, we just kind of try to facilitate. If we see somebody who's having a rough game, starting to maybe get a little frustrated, we try to pull them back from the edge a little bit. Probably the biggest word that I'll say more than anything else is communicate. When they start getting frustrated, they start falling apart, they stop talking to each other. So we really focus on trying to make sure that they're learning from their mistakes, that they're communicating with each other, and really those kind of intangibles. Really the things that your average high school student is probably going to struggle with naturally anyway. The game they know, but it's those parts that they might not know.
I have a quick follow-up for you, Damian. So for example, if you have someone on your League of Legends team and they just keep missing their skill shots and they start doing what we call tilting, right, where they're starting to kind of get really frustrated and starting to affect their play and everything. I mean, if you have a right guard who's just missing his blocks, right, or a defensive end who just can't get that quarterback. I mean, are those comparable things, or I'm curious to hear about that. Are they different?
They are. They are. And there have been times where, unfortunately, unlike in if you've ever played a game like League or any of those games, it's not like a football game or a basketball game where you can call a timeout and you can pull players out, put somebody else in. So really, it's more of helping them through that and reminding them, okay, we're seeing what happens. Hey, remember such and such games when you went full tilt, and how did that end up for you? So if you're having that bad game, what do you need to do? And I also ask them to really be honest with themselves. Is this player, is your other top laner, is he better than you or is she better than you? And if so, what do you need to do to even that playing field? How do you need to adapt to that? And how does the rest of the team need to help out in order to balance that? So yeah, that's a big part of it is having a lot of them. They'll start to tilt, and that does happen. So more than anything else, I just try to remind them of that and try to back them up a little bit and remind them in game. So.
Great. You know, this is something that, if I can jump into the discussion as well, this has been, you know, my big experience with Center Esports has been very, very similar to what you're describing, Damian. You know, and your comments when you came to visit us a couple of years ago now were really helpful. Other coaches I've talked to the collegiate level, it's the same thing. And so I kind of, you know, as Grant can tell people, I try to give the players as much kind of head as I can. And to be honest, they've always used it. A big goal here at Center College was, right, you know, you talk about underserved communities in the sense of, we see that we have students on this campus who get a huge amount out of being on a soccer team, a softball team, and so on and so on. And I'm seeing our esports players, it's the same thing. Like they feel they can represent the college, and they're learning how to deal with each other. And you make a great point. Like I played League of Legends the other night and had a miserable experience. And I knew it was a miserable experience 5 minutes in, and there was nothing I could do. There was 25 minutes to go. I couldn't, if I could have taken myself out, I would. And so that's been a real journey for us here as well. And so I think it's just interesting that everyone I talk to who's working in these coaching roles has those kind of same experiences. Well, I have a question here from the audience, and this maybe either Grant or Anya might answer it, or I could try and answer it. Aidan is asking, this is a question for anyone who wants to answer, so people could jump in, I suppose. I don't have a PC or any way to be part of an esports team or activity. What's the best way to begin getting into an esports community? Does anybody have any advice on how to get into that community? Go ahead, Anya, please.
So with esports and everything, because it's like a sport, there are professional players. And one of the big things that you can do is just watching professional games, because you can watch, you know, it's all on YouTube, it's all on Twitch. You can watch it live. And something actually that my whole family does, both of my parents used to play League of Legends before they just quit, but they still are interested in the game. They still like watching the game. So something that we can do as a family is just watching professional games, almost like how you would watch football or something. And that's honestly one of the easiest ways to just be invested in the esports community, just because a lot of people who play esports like League of Legends or something are going to be invested in these professional players because they're the best players. If you play football, you're probably going to be interested in professional football players. So I think honestly, like if you are interested in any type of game or any specific game, even if you can't play it, it's still a good idea to just, you know, interact with people who do play the game, you know, watch with them, talk with them about what happens. Yeah.
I think that's great.
I also have something too. Sorry, go for it.
No, please go, Allie. Please go ahead, Allie, please.
The barrier to entry for video gaming can seem really difficult. I would say that gaming can apply to anything. If you have a mobile phone, you can be a gamer. I think that the definition of gamer is something that I really want to change the culture around, because if you're playing something on your mobile phone, you're playing a game on your mobile phone, you're a gamer. Like, so you have that medium. You have something like Firewatch is a really easy thing to start playing if you're not super familiar with like game mechanics, and like the notion of like playing a game is intimidating, because that one you're just walking through a world, you're making choices based on a narrative. There are games that I think are a lot easier to start. So like with Firewatch, even if you didn't have a PC, if you had any console, I'm pretty sure it's on all of the console systems. It might actually even be on mobile now. I would have to check. But there are games that you can start with that won't just immediately throw you into the deep end of something that you wouldn't be able to handle. So I'm happy to send some recommendations like after this panel if you would like.
That's good. Thanks, Ali. And I was just going to say as well, if anyone's watching and kind of would like some more specifics, just get in touch with me and I'd share some stuff with you, and Ali can send some stuff to me that I could send on. If you want to hang on after for the encore presentation, you'll see some Smash Brothers. You'll kind of get a sense of how it works. You know, there was an interesting discussion a couple of years ago where ESPN started showing some esports events, and some of the quote unquote traditional, you know, you have these sports radio guys whose job it is to make headlines, and they got very angry about this. But actually what happened is the esports community has kind of bypassed typical television and cable, and it's just all online. So you can go to a site like twitch.tv, and in fact, you might be able to find a streamer that you like, someone who just plays a game and they talk about it while just kind of, some are very chill and just hanging out while they play, and some will talk to you about the game. And there's people from all kinds of communities from all over the world, any language you can think of. you can get into. And then finally, League of Legends, which we talked about a lot tonight. The company that makes that game is really starting to invest more and more and more into what is already a big product. So if you go to YouTube today and go to the League of Legends channel, they released today a little video, a little 5-minute animated short that actually talks you through, here is how our game works. If you want to watch our tournament in 2 weeks, pay attention to these 2 or 3 things, and then you'll go from there. And so we'd be happy to share resources, anyone asking. We have more questions, but I'm afraid we are out of time. I'm so sorry. I tell you what, really quickly, Fred asks, do speedrunners fall into the esport community in any way? Quick answers. Grant, you got a quick answer to that one? Or Anya?
I mean,
Grant.
kind of. Like, it's definitions are weird. It's an equally cool, spectatory, heavy, cool thing that involves video games at a high level of play. How people categorize stuff is whatever. Speedrunning is cool though. If you don't know what it is, look it up. It's some wild stuff.
I had to get Fred's question there. Had to get you in, Fred. Thanks everyone. You guys have been fantastic. I'm going to throw this to Steve now. Steve has some things to share with everyone before we sign off for the evening. Steve?
Wow, what a great event. I keep seeing Riley Friend in the corner on my screen, and he's just like really excited about speed running, right? Before we conclude this portion of the program, I want to share a little about next month. The Norton Center's 3rd online installment of its ongoing Culture Plus series will take place next month on Thursday, October 15 at 7:30 Eastern Time. Open to the public, this program will also be a convocation for center students. Its title, Culture Plus Artist Perspective, examines how artists of various disciplines such as painting, writing, and even rapping develop and share their perspective or point of view through their art. Once an artist discovers their voice, their eye, or their perspective, how is it perceived by others? And how do each of their art forms allow them to capture and share their worldviews? So we're excited to have another great panel of artists and a very special encore program following that discussion. Culture Plus Artist Perspective will be held again on Thursday, October 15 at 7:30. If you registered for this program, more information will be sent to you. If not, visit nortoncenter.com, the website, to sign up and receive latest news and information. I want to again thank our friends for sharing their thoughts and experiences on how a topic such as gaming has such deep roots in culture and the arts and is extremely relevant in our country and especially our economy. And I want to thank each of you who attended tonight's program for choosing to spend your evening with us. I learned a lot, and I hope that each of you also found this hour meaningful. Again, if you registered, you'll receive a follow-up email with additional resources, so some of those suggestions will include on the resource page related to this topic, including some of those games for you to try out. Once again, as Molly said, please follow the link that we're going to share in just a moment. Actually, it's in the chat right now, so if you go to the chat area, and if you don't know where that is, down on the bottom of the screen, the black screen with our faces, if you hover over it, chat will come up. Click on chat, and then go over to the bottom chat, and it'll take you to our next part of the program. We're jumping into the encore part, which will watch Center College student athletes perform in an esports game. Again, thank you to all the panelists, and thank you to all of you for participating in this program. We'll leave this slide up for a little bit, but we're all heading over to Twitch to watch some esports go on. Thank you again.
needs I think it needs the black one in, and it needs the other one out. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. Sit here and here. This one's a light here. Anyone on Twitch hear me right now? I can basically just turn mic volume up. And that's my solution. Okay, well it should be a little louder on the mic now. All right, cool. So to anyone who does not know the game of Super Smash Brothers, it's a fighting game. It's got plenty of depth, but it's a little easier to follow than some other games. At its core, the goal is to knock the other person off the stage. As you wail out on someone, just start beating them up, they will accumulate a number, and the higher the number is, the easier they are to launch off the stage. So here we have Jake as well as Justin for our first match. Each match will be a best 2 out of 3. Each player has 3 stocks, 3 lives. So the 2 people playing are Jake Fowler and Justin Klein, both seniors.
Thursday night.
Come on, Justin. You got it.
The whole quarantine. I'll have it.
restock. Are you gonna take that, Justin? Not a restock today. They want the peach comeback, Justin. At least someone wants it.
Choking this.
Josh on Twitch asks how can you join the esports team? I don't know if you mean the club or the team, but both of them could be done via an email to grant.lyon@center.edu. If you're specifically interested in joining either the League of Legends or Overwatch team, you could also send one to john.harney@center.edu. New folks are always cool. I'd love to add you to some email lists and stuff. Yeah. They really want this peach comeback, and you're kind of doing it. Oh, no, we're leaving. It's still there. It's still there.
God, all right.
Goodness. Oh.
Already getting nervous.
Of course, folks, this is a 2 out of 3, so we get to watch Justin lose twice. Isn't that exciting? Just kidding.
Oh my god. You answer.
Start battle. Lucas.
Oh. Now we got.
Peach wants you to go first. Ethan wants you to go Falco, Justin.
Who wants me to go foul? I would do it in a bird game.
One, go!
This one doesn't hurt. It just looks pretty. A much better showing, Justin. I think you got some momentum. You gonna take that, Justin? Justin, the people want this. Lena says, I didn't realize how much Peach abuses Toad in her fighting style. And I gotta say, I agree. She's a monarch. How do you expect her to treat her minions? And Pwep says, with decency. I agree. I agree. Oh! Justin, please. Okay. This is so even. Justin, you got this. Oh. Oh, it's so close though. Oh! Justin, if you don't do this, I'll be scared. It's so tense. Oh! Oh, Josh. That was so close. All right, so the way the bracket's working is they just play, then Reed and I are going to play, and then whoever wins of that will face Jake, and it's going to be me. So I am just to be a little cocky, you know.
What up, everybody? It's Jake on the mic now.
Luigi, Pikachu.
We have Grant on the Pikachu and Reed on the Luigi. Let's get to it.
3, 2, 1, go!
Round 2, baby.
See, for those who don't know Grant, he normally goes DDD, and his DDD is definitely well known throughout the campus community, as it greatly abuses the Gordo. That's his side being made. However, this is the first time I've personally seen Grant without the Pikachu, which many would consider to be one of the best in the game.
Mask is clogging up my glasses, so I'm going to blame it on that if I lose. I just want you to know that ahead of time.
Reed with the repeated dash attacks. Reed with the random up B, and it gets punished by a Pikachu forward smash. Grant with the dash attack to take the first stock, and he taunts on it. Will Reed take that disrespect?
I have to assert my dominance. Run that one down.
Will we see a 3-stock? Find out in the next few minutes.
play so fast.
Will Reed be able to take this first stock and a down B will close out?
I'm still feeling pretty cocky. I can do this.
Will we see the type of comeback Justin pulled against me first game? Does Reed have it in him? Gets him off stage. Grant returns with the side B. Oh no!
Oh no!
An unfortunate self-destruct from Grant. Makes this comeback a little more realistic for Reed.
I'm not gonna let it matter.
Grant throws him off stage. Will he be able to get back? Oh no! The down smash closes out the game. Grant takes game number 1.
Reed, you want the DDD?
Yes.
You want it?
Yes, I do. I'm here.
Looks like Grant is pulling out his signature King DDD. And Reed switches up his character to Donkey Kong. An interesting matchup between two heavy characters. Let's see how it pans out.
You like the big boys in here. Big boys.
Oh, the double Gordo hit right off the bat.
People want to spike with Pikachu or with DDD? Well, I wasn't looking at the chat, and also I'm in comment. But I'm happy. I'm bad at spiking. I can do a lot of other cheesy stuff.
Oh, the up smash, not quite enough. There's the spike the chat wanted, but it wasn't off stage. Oh, an up smash from Grant to close out the first stock. This Gordo pressure from Grant is relentless. Reed can't seem to get back on stage. Oh, the dash attack sent him backwards for some reason. Momentum was not conserved there, folks. Come on, Reed, you just have to hit him once. With a forward smash charge from Grant, Reed can sneak behind him and forward smash him on his own. Oh, and
We got cocky, but we're staying humble, baby. Let's go.
And Grant belly flops on him to close out game 2.
It is time.
All right.
Reed, press A. All right, now we'll move into the finals. Jake versus Grant.
I hope you are all prepared emotionally.
All right, everybody. This is the moment you've been waiting for, the final matchup. Jake is renowned and held the title in our recent Smash tournament last year.
You gotta get rid of the women's ring.
And he ranked first. And Grant happens to be the president of the Esports Club.
I'm head gamer, baby. I got this.
So this will be an interesting matchup for sure.
Tournament champ. Guy who talks about games a lot. Let's go.
No matter what happens.
Yeah, you know I gotta give him the big guy. I've been knocked out of bracket by this man before. I think twice. So this is an emotional match for me. I hope everyone knows that. I start off with my very first goal though. Oh no.
It's DDD and Lucas.
Oh no.
They're deadly characters.
We don't have the momentum yet, but everyone likes a comeback story, you know what I mean?
There is no momentum in space.
There's like extra. Oh no! Okay, we can still do this.
Jake going for those spikes. And Grant will not give up on Gordo. I've heard now that it is currently the best move. Oh, Jake is awesome. What a recovery.
I had a chance.
Ooh. This is coming down to the wire. Both of them have one stock. France at 6.5%, which is very low, and Jake is at 0.
Oh no, he has killed himself. No, he's back.
Oh, that was a close
boy.
call from Jake. That could have been awful.
What do you mean awful?
For Jake.
Get some more percent. Kick in the face. It's okay, I'm fatter than you. I can take it from you.
Oh, another close call.
Oh, that was close.
Well, Jake has won the first round, but it's still 2 out of 3. Will Jake win the next round, or will Grant? Tune
Those
in.
really are the two options, aren't they?
Tune in for these next few minutes.
It's all down to this.
Lucas. King TDD.
Gotta get my favorite little green sweater on.
It's mains only, baby.
The best time to wear a striped sweater is all the time.
3, 2, 1, go!
You heard it here first. Oh, Jake is going for those combos. I think Grant would very much like to get you off the stage.
Oh, you short little child. I wish you were playing Donkey Kong in your life. Why did that happen? About to be on the stage. That's something.
And Grant has already lost his first stop.
Playing poorly, but again, people love the comeback.
And it looks like a comeback might just happen.
I'm doing it.
This
He said might. Allow alumni, sure.
For those of you who did not hear him, he asked if our Minecraft server will allow alums, and Grant said sure. Ooh. They're down to 2 stocks each. Grant looking okay, but will he make the comeback?
The combo is just amazing.
And Jake gets in a combo, it's basically game over. Except maybe... Oh, folks, this is... We are...
really bad misplays by everyone.
We are on the edge now, folks. 0-0-1 stock. You better stay on the edge of your seats.
Wrong move.
This is nerve-wracking. And it looks like
well done.
We have a winner.
Well done.
Jake Fowler proves once again that he is the top Smash player on the campus.
Chad's feeling some sort of way.
Don't say no. I know I'm such a lovable personality, but I got bested, folks, you know?
Who says I'm not a lovable personality?
Jake is also a very lovable personality, perhaps more so. Oh, I don't know about that one, dog. All right, well, thanks for coming out. Hope you enjoyed the convo, and I hope you enjoyed watching me lose. Yes.